What is the definition of side effect?
An effect from some.
From the side? Well said. Hey, what's happening, you guys? And welcome back to the Proclivity Podcast. I'm your host, Joel. I'm here with Emily. And today, if you've clicked on this podcast, because you're interested in being able to master your communication within relationships. This could be with your romantic relationship. This could be with your business relationships. This could be with your friendships. Being able to have clear and precise communication can be literally the difference between being successful in business, successful in your relationships, and even successful with yourself. So we're going to give you our top tips and work you through how to communicate. And we want you to tangibly take these tools and go apply them. And guess what? It's going to be hard at first because you're used to communicating in a certain way, in a certain manner. And when we start changing something, there's going to be a little learning curve. Yet, with practice, you will find, particularly when it works, and you're like, holy crap, this worked like a charm. Maybe with my kids, maybe with my husband, my wife. You're going to be like, I'm going to do this again. So, we're going to dive in. Emily, are you excited about this podcast?
I am a little nervous.
I like that. That's good. That's something Emily and I have been practicing on, is sharing our emotions. And that is part of communication as well. We're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability and the importance of vulnerability in any relationship, of being able to connect deeper and be able to understand each other more. Yet before we dive too far ahead, Emily, can you tell us the definition of communication?
A shared meaning between sender and receiver.
Shared meaning between a sender and a receiver. You guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but my degree is in speech communications, which is not speech pathology, but understanding verbal, nonverbal, and how that affects our inner and outer world. And I loved getting that degree. I didn't want to go to college. I actually, fun story, guys, I was on academic probation and I was about to get kicked out of college because they're like, you're making us look bad. And then I found communications, loved it, got on the dean's list, 4.0s, got an honor roll because I loved talking about communication. It was so fascinating to me. And this is one of the biggest pieces from my degree, is the definition of communication, which is shared meaning between a sender and a receiver. So, Emily, what's your take on that? You obviously know mine. What's your take on that definition?
Ooh, I saw something online the other day that actually shifted my definition, and I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but it's not just about hearing what someone else is saying, it's understanding what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a saying that really struck a chord with me. I love that you brought that up. We need to understand before we're understood. I'll say that again for the people in the back. We need to understand someone before we want to be understood. Too often we get into a communication, we want to be understood now. I'm not feeling good. I don't like the way this feels, and I want to tell you right now. Instead of going, let me understand this situation more, which takes a little more patience and a lot more questions. But I love that. I love that perception, because looking at a sender and receiver, currently right now, Emily, who is the sender and who's the receiver?
Currently, right now, I'm the receiver. You're the sender.
That's it, right?
Okay.
So I'm sending a message to you, and you're receiving it. Mm-hmm. And then when I close my mouth, the roles are reversed. You become the sender. I become the receiver. That's how communication works. I'm sending one way. That person is receiving it, computing it, and it's being filtered through their own set of beliefs, ideas, values, everything else, and emotions. And then they're going to send something back. And this can be the ping pong match that we can get really caught up into, is the send, receive, send, receive, send, receive. And we actually don't get to the point of understanding or creating a shared meaning. So, Emily, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is shared meaning?
Shared meaning would be agreeing. Oh man, agreeing what you're talking about in terms of, oh man,
Ooh, I got
not
her.
just because the example I think of is like, hey, we can communicate all we want. We can say like, hey, I'm going to do this, or I feel this, or I need this. But until we understand like the why behind it, or actually what is the meaning, again, the understanding there, it's just words back and forth. And so there needs, yeah, I can't say it better than a shared meaning or understanding.
Yeah, we're creating understanding about a particular concept, choice, idea, right? We're sharing an emotion, we're sharing an idea. This could be as simple as who's picking up the kids. And this happens quite often in relationships. I thought you were picking up the kids here, and then you didn't end up picking them up, or you picked them up later. And it's because we actually didn't create a shared meaning of when are the kids getting picked up, who's picking them up, and at what time. And without having a shared meaning, we may understand, oh, yeah, the kids are getting picked up, but there may be unspoken expectations of how those kids are meant to be picked up. And so,
Mm-hmm.
with unspoken expectations, we create premeditated judgment with other people. And this is where we can get a lot of trouble, because I didn't speak my actual expectation of what I needed. Then you didn't meet it because I didn't have shared meaning. And so now I have resentment or judgment towards you because you didn't hear me. Is that the case? Or did we not come to a shared meaning? So, Emily, how do we come to a shared meaning? How do you do it? How do you do it with me?
Well, I think of first and foremost when we're setting goals, like we think of like, what's the outcome here? We ask that question. And to me, it's getting real specific. Like the example going back to picking up the kids, like date, time, when are you bringing snacks, like getting all the details out of what is expected, like painting that picture.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I think of is the other person repeating that back. Like, okay, this is, if I hear you correctly, this is what's going on, and repeating it to make sure they know, have it written down, whatever the thing may be. And agreeing that what we both say is the understanding.
Mm-hmm. And Emily nailed it right there. You guys, good job, Emily. That was solid. This is why she was nervous, you guys. Is that a very good technique to create shared meaning is to say, Emily, what I heard you say is you'd like me to pick up the kids at 3:30, and you'd want to make sure that they have snacks and juice because you want me to take them to the park over off of at this time. Is that correct? And if Emily hears that parroted back and she goes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Good. Or if it was not, yes, and where I wanted you to take them is this park. Yes, and is a very good communication technique because it's inclusive to the individual. Emily could say, no, or yeah, but I said this. And when we use that word but, it doesn't feel like I was justified in all the other pieces that I said right. I could have said all the other pieces right, and you're like, no, I told you blueberries, not strawberries. I mean, come on, give a guy a break. I get it. Yet, if I said, yes, that is spot on, and can we make sure it's blueberries instead of strawberries? Oh, yeah, no problem. Whoa, way more inclusive. We're together on a team because I said and.
Mm-hmm.
What's the results of poor communication for you?
For me.
What has happened? Have you ever had poor communication in your life, Emily?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I tend to avoid hard conversations. So
Mm-hmm.
the example, or like the example of what happens as a result, is resentment. As you said, resentment's the biggest one. Feeling hurt and overthinking for me. I start to overthink of like, well, are they thinking this? Are they thinking that? Did I say that wrong?
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of times I could just go and communicate better.
Does that change your perception of that individual in that current time and space?
In that time, yeah.
And how do you restructure that perception of that individual?
I mean, communicating with them first and foremost, asking the questions. Um, like, did you mean to do that? Did you mean to say that? Is this what you're thinking? Is this what's going on? And also a self-talk to myself of like, hey, when I catch myself overthinking of like, is that true? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I thinking that? Right. So I ask myself questions and ask the other person questions.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. This is going to be, I'm interested in your response to this. And the reason I'm asking this, you guys, is that I want to be able to get like personal experiences both with Emily and I, so you can see that there there are tips and techniques, and it also takes time and practice. Is Has there been a time where you know that you need shared meaning, and you know you need to be inclusive, and somebody says something that just riles you up and like gets you like in full fight or flight mode? What is a typical reaction for you, and what is the ideal reaction, and have you been able to do that before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Typical reaction is the either flee, freeze, or fawn, which is either I people please and just go along with it to get it over with, or I freeze and I don't know what to say, and I'm just so frustrated that I just keep my mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those would be the most typical. Or flee would be the third. Would be like, hey, I'm just done. I need a break. Like, let's come
Mm-hmm.
back to this.
Mm-hmm.
Ideal would be to pause, take a few deep breaths, and say, hey, can I have a second to process, or a minute to process this,
Right.
and ask another question.
Mm-hmm. And have you been able to do that?
At times. Mm-hmm.
What do you feel is like your biggest struggle from being able to go, hey, I know I'm supposed to ask questions, but okay, why don't I do it?
Fear of response that I don't want to hear.
Got you. Got you. So there's going to be a response that's going to make you feel a certain way, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to feel that way.
Yep.
Got you. Got you. And so this is what can absolutely 100%, and guys, maybe you're resonating here, of taking off or appeasing or stonewalling something that in mechanics of that we've learned. Not only did we learn from ourselves, but we specifically learned from our parents of this happened, this, I watched them react this certain way. Oh, this is how we react with emotions. We stonewall, or we get really angry and aggressive, or we make sure our opinions heard, or we just, you know, get really quiet and shrink away. What happens to you when uh, you do freeze, fawn, appease? Is there any side effects for you
It's
mentally?
better. It feels good in the moment because I'm like, okay, it's all settled down for a moment. Yet then in the back of my head, I'm like, well, there's still like, is that how I want it to be? Right. By just pleasing or just sitting there and staying more quiet. So I know at some point either it's going to come back up again,
Mm-hmm.
um, or I hope and pray that it doesn't, and it'll all be okay.
Okay, and that second part, how many times has that actually happened?
Not a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the point, guys, right? Is when we don't address it, it will fester. The body is meant to hold on to those experiences, particularly if we have upregulated responses. Meaning, for me and communication with my mom specifically, or people who reflect the same energy as my mom or responses as my mom, I get really, really tense. Like, oh, not just like, oh, I got a little tension on my chest, but like this large tension on my entire body that feels very threatening. And I can stonewall that and go, nope, I'm just going to completely shut down. And you can see that I'm upset, but I'm not going to tell you anything because I'm going to be in this really protective state and protect myself. Yet it doesn't go away, guys. I did it for 35 years with my mom until I finally went, wait a second. I've been doing the same thing for 35 years, trying to shift here and there. What I have to do is I have to make a dramatic change here. I have to change the way I'm responding to my mom, and I have to bring her in on this communication, this change. It's not just I'm going to make my change, I'm going to set my boundaries, and I'm not going to communicate with that individual. I'm going to communicate with that individual, invite them into the change, and then they have to step into that change themselves. So it's not saying you can't be part of this. It's saying, no, absolutely, I want you to be part of this. But it's going to be within these boundaries where I am healing and creating safety for myself. And maybe they don't want to participate in those boundaries. And that's okay. Yet those boundaries should be a safe boundary for both individuals. Too often, when we set boundaries in communications with somebody who creates a very unsafe environment, we're putting these boundaries up that's actually going to make them feel very unsafe. And so then we end up having this back and forth boundary setting that maybe then they set their boundary and they say, well, this is how it's going to be for me. And if you want any action with me, this is how it's going to have to be. So then you come out of your boundary and you feel unsafe. You go into theirs. Oh, that doesn't feel safe. And you end up retreating. And then they come into your boundary and they're like, well, that doesn't feel safe. And it's this back and forth where we're starting to create resentment with each other because we're going, that hurts me. And I tell you that hurts me. So I go back to my boundary. Then they go, well, yeah, that hurts me. And we start pointing fingers here instead of being able to go, hey, how am I going to create a safe boundary for me first and that individual that is open, that is non-judgmental, so that they feel safe and seen? How are we going to be able to create that and be able to open that up? And that's a tough thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Like if one person sets a boundary, but it crosses the other person's boundary or however you set it, what do you do?
Right. What do you think we need to do? I'm literally asking you. Like, I don't. I'm not saying I have an answer.
If you want to maintain the relationship, then come to an agreement and understanding, shared meaning in some area.
And let me ask you this. Do you think it'll be comfortable for either party in a new agreement?
No.
In any good negotiations, and this is through and through with negotiations, each party should leave not feeling like, oh, I've won. Each party should leave going like, this is uncomfortable for me. And I still feel safe, seen, and heard. If we don't have those things, safe, seen, and heard, guys, you're going to end up in a position where you feel like you're buffering this emotion until the next moment. And so when it comes to negotiations of being able to create boundaries, you guys should both feel a little uncomfortable. And then when you're a little uncomfortable about it, what should we do?
Create a shared meaning?
Yeah, talk about it. Yeah, communicate with each other. Hey, I just want to be able to let you know I'm feeling scared about this. And I'm not asking for you to change it, but I am asking you to hear my emotion. That's a big difference. But going, I don't like this. This is stupid. I could talk about the story of it, of what I'm going through, where there's a difference, you guys, between being open and vulnerable. Open is sharing my story. Vulnerability is sharing my emotions to the story. So if I'm open, I can be open to you and actually be very deconstructive, like breaking you down. I don't like this situation. This is terrible. I just don't like the way it feels, and we're not going to do this anymore. Whoa. Or that's sharing, that's being open. Or I can be vulnerable. I get really scared and uncertain about myself when these moments come up between the two of us. And when those moments come up, I actually struggle to be able to express how I feel because I feel like I'm going to be judged. And I'm not saying that you're judging me. I'm just saying I have an insecurity of being judged. I just wanted to let you know. There's a difference between the two stories, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a key difference because a lot of people who've gone through their proclivity method and we learn about the victim mentality, they fear saying like I feel judged, or like they want to say I feel like you're judging me. And there's like this line where they get confused of like, well, I'm in control of my feelings, so I shouldn't be putting that on you,
Hmm.
right? And so what Joel said is like, no, it's just sharing how you feel. You're not putting it on the other person. Is that right?
That's exactly it. I'm not asking you that. I'm not saying you're judging me. I'm not saying that you're undervaluing me. I'm saying I am feeling undervalued. And I want you to know that. And this is where it can get really, um, this is where it can get really, really scary for relationships. Because, Emily, if I came to you and I said, hey, Emily, I'm feeling very undervalued, I'm not feeling seen, it makes me feel really scared when we don't communicate about when to pick up the kids. And you react by saying, well, the kids are supposed to be picked up at this time. You know that's what time they're supposed to be picked up. What do you think that does to me?
Doesn't make you feel heard.
Deb, I'm not feeling heard, seen, or valued. The emotion that I just put out, I opened up my heart and I said, man, I'm going to express my emotions to you. I'm not saying it's your fault, but I'm going to express my emotions. And we go right into tactics. This is where people are going to recoil. They're going to go, whoa, I'm not sharing those emotions again. And what do you think is going to happen if I can't share my emotions?
Loss of connection.
Loss of connection, for sure. Bitterness, resentment, anger, frustration. And then instead of being vulnerable, we're just expressing the emotion of anger. We're staying in the zone of anger and resentment and bitterness. And then we wonder why we can't just let it go. We can't let it go, guys, because we haven't felt the emotion yet. We haven't given space to feel the emotion, and you can't regulate an emotion that hasn't been felt, hasn't been processed. And if you have that emotion with an individual and you don't get to process it together, there will be resentment, and it's going to be too hard for you just to let it go because you actually haven't given it space to feel it. And if you have a partner, doesn't matter if it's romantic or not, a friendship, business partnership in which the two of you can come together, both see and hear each other and be able to create that safe space, those feelings now have the ability to breathe, to feel accepted and seen. And then it's the actions after that of, I know that emotion. And so am I willing to come back and communicate that again? Hey, you've told me that you feel really unsafe and unseen in these times. I just want to check back in with you. And being able, willing to come back into the emotions instead of what what other options,
Just not avoiding, hoping
right?
for the best.
Compartmentalizing or stonewalling. And This is why Emily and I's business partnership is so good, because she can compartmentalize and I can stonewall, and then everything's great. I'm just kidding. You guys, we work really hard in terms of being able to communicate with one another. So shall we move on? We could stay in this zone for days. But let's dive into the actual 3 tips here to be able to master your communication with your partner. And these are quite simple, yet take practice. So, Emily, what's the first one? You say it, I'll dive into it.
Okay. So know what conversation you're in.
This is a huge piece and component. So, an easy way to think about what conversation you're in is to think about, is this person who's coming to me? If Emily was coming to me, she came to me for a reason. She wants to express some type of communication. She's most likely feeling some type of emotion, and she wants to explain something. This is not just your normal communications. Hey, what's going on? Hey, did you complete or fill out this form? That's not what we're talking about, and can be as well. What we're talking about is somebody's coming to you and that they want to talk to you about something. And what I want you guys to think is this person coming to me because they need help, something that's practical? They need something figured out? Do they need to be held, physically held, or given space to feel that there's opportunity to be holding space for a person, which is emotional? Or does this person need to be heard? I just need to be here and hear you out, which is more social. Help, held, heard. Emily, do you ever use this in your communications? Either communicating with someone, somebody comes to you and you go, hey, I just want to check in. Do you want to be held, or heard? Have you ever tried using this technique?
I haven't. I tend to forget when I get in it because I let my emotions take over. And I tend to be a practical person in terms of trying to help or want to be helped. I want to find a solution. So I tend to go into that category first, but it is something I'm working on.
And let me ask you this. This is going to be helpful for other people that are listening. Why do you move into the practical, the help? Why do you feel like that's your... We talked about this in terms of the trauma triangle. Hey, we kind of come in as a certain character. Out of these 3, why do you think you go to the practical side for you?
To me, it's habit of that's what I want myself. When I go to someone, I want to be helped. I want to find a solution so we can move on.
Got you.
And yep, that's it.
So there's a piece of you that goes, hey, I feel better when you just tell me what to do, or something's figured out. Why don't you think that you go into the emotional or the social, the held or the heard first?
I didn't even think of those as being options ever. Yeah, I always just thought you had to find a solution. If someone's coming to me, I needed to help them. Or if I was going to someone else, it was to find, again, how do we fix this problem? And the other ones don't feel, it's not my intuition, or it's not my immediate response. I don't feel like I'm doing a whole lot if I'm being held or just being social. It doesn't feel productive.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation or scenario where you just wanted to be heard and you actually weren't working for a solution?
For sure. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot about myself.
And has there ever been a time where you're just like, man, I'm just feeling very overwhelmed, and being able to have somebody that's just going, hey, we can just sit here?
Yeah.
Both, and all 3 of them can be very helpful, yes?
Correct, yeah.
So which one would you say that you're like, hey, I would like to move into this space a little bit more for myself and for others?
I mean, the emotional, the holding space. Again, my go-to in my head is I'm not really helping them by just holding space. So it's hard, but I know it does help me. So holding space.
Holding
Both ways.
space. There it is. There it is. That can be a really tough one for a lot of people, because I would say a lot of people are in the practical, the help. Like, cool. All right. Well, how are we going to figure out the situation? When a lot of times people are like, hey, can you just hold space for me? Like, I really want to get this off my chest. This is why therapists are so good.
Mm-hmm.
They're just sitting there. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more. Right. And if we go into that social spot of being heard, we can always ask this, guys. I want you to think of this. You can always ask this. Emily comes to me. She's talking about a situation. I, I can resonate with her. I can feel her out, and I can go, hey, Emily, before we move any further, do you want me to help you figure this out? Do you want me just to listen to you? Or do you want me to ask you some questions to help guide you through this? What would be best beneficial for you? And for a lot of people, they're going to go, that seems really weird. In the beginning, yes, it will be a little bit weird. The more that you start practicing these communications, the more you can start realizing exactly where they're at. And you need to detach yourself from what you think you want. And it's not about you, to be able to figure out what they need. It's not what you want, it's what they need. And you can start getting to the point where you can start asking questions where you'll start figuring out, oh, they just want to be heard. That's it. So I'm just going to hold space here, let them feel comfortable. Maybe I am going to give them a hug. I can see they're really emotional. I'm going to co-regulate with them and just give them just a nice, strong, easy hug, and then just sit there with them. Because I can tell you, for a lot of people who are going through grief, you know what they want? They just want space. Will you be here with me? That's it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. You can literally sit there, guys. And if you're not comfortable with holding space with yourself, guess what? It's going to be really hard to be able to hold space for someone else. Meaning, can you sit with just yourself? When the emotions get big, can you sit with your emotions? If you can't sit with your emotions when they get big, oh my gosh, you want nothing to do with holding space for somebody with big emotions, because you struggle with holding your emotions. And so think about this in terms of these three different spaces. The practical is help. The emotional is being held, either physically or holding space. And the social part is being heard, meaning I hear you. Let me ask questions to be able to continue to walk you through this. Anything else on that, Emily?
Nope. That's good.
Well played. She really thought about it, guys. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, she really thought about that. What's the second part of mastering your communication with your partner?
Matching the emotion, this is where I have questions.
Oh, I'm so glad.
But go into it.
I'm so glad, because we're going to talk about this with you and I, something that I've recognized. Do you have any idea what matching the emotion is? What would you say?
Yeah, well, and I've heard you talk about it before. Like when someone comes to you and they're sad, like, okay, get down on their level and be sad with them. But the question for me is like, okay, well, I get that. Like, especially a kid comes to you, you're like, oh, like, is everything okay? Like, so I want to hear from you. Like, what do you mean by be sad with them? Because that feels a little weird when I hear that.
How come?
Because if I'm not sad, why would I change my emotion for someone else?
Cool. So we're not saying change your emotion. We're saying match their emotion, right? So by matching the emotion, I'm not taking on the emotion. I'm not trauma bonding with them. Like, oh, you're so brokenhearted over losing your ball, right? When a kid, like you're not connected to that, but you are able to come down to their level and go, oh man, I can empathize with you. I've lost things in my life too. And so I come down into their being sad. Hey, I'm going to match you. It's literally, guys, I want you to imagine there's a big difference. And this is something that I do with all kids. When they start talking to me, I immediately come down to a knee. I want to get to your level. I don't want them looking up at me. I want to be able to look at your level. And so I'm going to get down on a knee. And if they're excited, I'm going to get excited. If they're sad, I'm going to be a little sad. Right? I'm not saying I am sad. I'm matching the emotion of sadness. If they're confused, I'm going to go, huh, that is peculiar. Tell me more. What do you think this is about? If they're frustrated, oh gosh, yes, I can understand how frustrating that is. Can you tell me more about that? My tone is slightly changing and I'm matching where they're at. That doesn't mean that I'm going to incite, meaning I'm going to fan the flame. I'm going to match the emotion, but move them away from it. So if they're super angry, I can match their anger. Oh my gosh, your mom said that again. That has to be so freaking frustrating. Can you tell me more about it? And they're going to get frustrated. I'm like, oh, you know what? I've had that experience with my mom too. And it's really hard to manage. Yet, can I share an experience with you? Yeah, sure. And I can share my experience. And that might start de escalating their energy. So now I'm starting to come down, and guess what they're going to do? Because I've built trust. Match my emotion. So when I start coming down, they might start coming down with me, but I got to go meet them first and be able to come down because there's nothing worse that when you're feeling blue, people are like, yay, life is great. Or they're hitting you with emojis of exclamation marks and big smiles and flowers and all the creative, beautiful, wonderful things. And you're like, yeah, I'm really sad right now. And I'm glad you're super happy. But I don't feel like I'm being seen, heard, or safe at this moment. So what am I going to do? For me, I start stonewalling. I'm going to pull myself away from the situation. This person doesn't see me and where I'm at. And so I'm going to start backing away, or I'm going to start putting up my guard a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
I
think
see your wheels turning.
the word empathize resonates better for me than matching, because matching to me still means like, oh, I have to be sad. So that helps a lot in terms of like, okay, I empathize with them. But then also like when you say like, okay, well, if someone's texting me being happy, like again, that sounds a little counterintuitive when we're like the positivity people, right? It's like, okay, well, I think I would imagine people questioning that, if that makes sense, of like, well, wait a second, I thought you're the best day ever guy, so this is confusing.
Yeah. Best day ever, and I've told people this many different times, best day ever isn't the absence of negative emotions or hard emotions or big emotions. Best day ever is the ability to celebrate, as I was telling you today in our team meeting, that I'm going through some hard emotional feelings. Good. I'm excited about it. That attitude creates the best day ever. That no matter what the weather is, my emotions, what's happening in work, personal life, that I can go, yep, I can feel this emotion. I can feel through it. And I'm excited to be able to get through the other side of it. I'm gonna choose how this day ends and how I go through it. And so when it comes to positivity and so on and so forth, you can absolutely can. Yet I don't know if you've been on the other side, Emily, or you're just super positive all the time. Maybe you're actually the best day ever and I'm not. Uh, Yet when somebody else is in a great mood, and go ahead and just take a look at a kid, you're in a great mood and the kid's really sad about something. You're like, oh, it's going to be fine. No, it's so great. You're going to be great. We're not connecting to their experience. It's being disingenued to not connect with their experience and go, man, I've been sad before too. I understand where you're at. So now all of a sudden I feel like you're with me instead of, oh no, I want to get you. And I heard this the other day, when it comes a true friend, when you're stuck in the mud, isn't one that's handing you the stick trying to get you out of the mud. They're the one that comes and sits next to you and says, when you're ready, we can get out. But if you're in this mud, I'm in this mud. And when somebody does that and they match you and they go, I got you. And I know this is sad. And I'm right here. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be sad. I can't fully connect to your feeling. If this has something to do with your kid and I don't have a kid, I can't say that I know exactly what you're feeling. But I can if you give me an emotion of saying, I feel overwhelmed. Oh man, I can sit in that mud with you. I've been overwhelmed before too. Where I don't feel like I have enough time. I'm not being seen. Thanks for sharing that with me. And well, I just want to sit here with you. Is that okay?
Helpful.
The wheels are still turning.
Yes, I'm trying to think of different examples.
I love it. Well, and you guys, Emily didn't have a ton to study on our notes today. And that's why she was a little nervous because she didn't know what was going to get thrown at her. Yet, this is the best part of being able to go, man, that's your feelings? And I don't like that. I don't resonate with it, or I don't see how that works. And so, if there's anything else, Emily, just know that any of the things you're feeling, most likely somebody else is listening,
Mm-hmm.
going like, yeah, I'm feeling that too.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Anything else
So I
on that?
appreciate it. It's still a little hard for me to grasp. That's why I'm thinking of examples, because there are times when, say, someone's like sad but not communicating, or yeah, it is hard to connect with, and I'm like, why are you sad? Like, and that sounds like mean, but the big part is if they're not asking me for help, I'm like, well, what? I don't like in your, the person is expecting to be sat with without the communication part. That's where I'm like, well, what do we do there?
That's a great one. Oh, you and I have done that before. We've done that dance, right? And I don't know if that was the example that you're using, but I appreciate you bringing it up one way or the other. Because what has happened in the past, guys, I've had some big emotions. I don't communicate with M. I act all poo-poo, sad pants, and she doesn't necessarily know how to interact. And one of the things that we've talked about, and I've told her, hey, this really helps me because it's a big challenge for me, is when I start stonewalling, it's hard for me to be able to connect. It's hard for me to be able to connect because I've learned to like pull back. And this is a really difficult one, guys, if you're on the other side of being able to go, hey, I see that you're having some big emotions. Do you want to talk to me about it? And the answer can be yes or no. Yes, I do. Okay. Do you want to sit down right now? Yeah, that would be nice. Or no, I don't. And if we get a no, are we willing to come back? Or are we going to go, okay, well, you figure it out when you want to figure it out? And it depends on the individual and what they've asked for. And that's the importance of communication, guys, is being able to be vulnerable and say, like, I may push you away a couple times, but each time that you come back, it shows me that you care. And it really means a lot to me that you do it. And I'm sorry that I treat you this way at times. It's not the way I want to. I'm still working through these trauma wounds of my past and being able to go, thank you for showing up. And that can be holding space, is just being able to come back to it and come back to it. Yet, if we tend to be a practical emotion person, we're going to be like, and we tend to run away from big emotions, then it's going to make sense that on my side, me asking for space and emotions, where you're like, I don't really want to touch those emotions. And if you need help, tell me, and we'll figure it out by A plus B equals C.
Yep.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, that and when someone stonewalls me, I get annoyed. So I'm like, well, then why? Yeah, it's me that has, so it's both of those.
And tell everybody, why do you get annoyed when they stonewall?
Because I feel like it's rude, like they're being mean. So I'm like, why do you deserve me to be there for you if you're
Totally.
acting this way?
100%. 100%. And being able to ask ourselves in that scenario situation, man, I'm wanting to run away from this emotion, or I don't like this feeling. Do I need to be in this situation? Is this somebody that I care about, like coming back to? Can I actually let this go? Or is this person important enough for me where I go, man, that pisses me off? And what can we do when we get vulnerable? Explain that that really pisses me off. And it's really hard for me. Oh, it's hard for you. Okay. So now both of us are in negotiations of, man, I got my feelings hurt. I stonewall. You don't like it when I'm rude or I don't express my emotions. So now there can be two ways in this party. One, you can come up and go, hey, do you want to talk about it? And that's going to be hard for you because you don't want to, right? In general.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be hard for me, a stonewaller, right? And if you guys are stonewallers, you guys are going to get this and understand this because you're going to feel emotional and you're going to feel like they should just know what's going on in your head and they should sit there until your wall comes down. It's going to be important for the stonewaller to be able to go, I'm still feeling some big emotions and it's really hard for me right now. And I want to stonewall. And I want you to know that me stonewalling you isn't a reflection of who you are. And I'd like for you to come and check back up on me. And I'm really sorry that I'm stonewalling you in this situation. Because that's going to be hard for the stonewaller. And the person that's coming up is going to go like, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back. Damn it. This is negotiations, guys, where both parties were vulnerable and go, I see you. Thank you for sharing. Is it okay if I check back up with you tomorrow? That'd be really great. Thank you. And I see you, and I'm sorry that I'm stonewalling. That's okay. We'll work through this together. We've come to an agreement. We have shared meaning. Wait a second. I'm in that space.
Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense.
Anything else
Nailed
to
it.
pick? Anything else to pick it apart?
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. You guys, anytime that I can get something to make sense with Emily, I feel very victorious because she has about 5,000 neural pathways on one thought. And if I can get her back on, it's like a Rubik's Cube. You ever finish a Rubik's Cube? You're just like, oh my gosh, I'm the smartest person alive. That's my feeling I'm having right now at minute 50. I'm feeling fully completed for the day.
Thanks for walking through that.
Anytime. And the last part. So currently, guys, we have know what conversation you're in, help, heard, or held. And we have match the emotion. What's the last one?
Curiosity and connection.
You know that one. What's that about?
Yeah. So being able to ask questions instead of constantly stating things of like, well, you did this and it's this way and blah, 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 rather than like, hey, well, why do you feel that way? Or what's going on here? Asking the questions is huge.
You want to role play?
Sure.
Okay. Tell me something. Something maybe you're frustrated with, or it doesn't have to be real life. That's what role playing is all about. But we can walk through it. This is going to be a lot of fun, you guys. So if you've made it this far, this is going to be great. Emily gets really nervous about this stuff.
Actually, just thought of something. This is good. This is not normal because I hear this with other people. I think. Okay. So a question.
Not a question, just something you're feeling. You're coming to me
Oh,
because
oh, right, right.
you're upset about something, or I did something wrong, or somebody else did you wrong, or you
Okay.
can't figure something out.
Okay, Joel, I'm frustrated because I heard you did a cold plunge and I wasn't invited.
First thing that I'm going to do, guys, watch this. Connect. You know what, Emily? I hear you. I know that we've talked about doing cold plunges together. We've done many together before. What would you have wanted me to do when it comes to inviting you for the cold plunge?
Include me and send an invite.
I can understand where I missed that. And I'm really sorry for that. When is the next time you'd like to go?
Next week.
I would love to go with you next week. That sounds like an absolute amazing plan. Can you do 12 p.m.?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for coming and telling me this. It really matters to me, and I appreciate you coming. Back and forth, guys. It was, I'm going to connect with her. I'm going to affirm her emotion. Yeah, you're right. I can see where that was really hurtful. And I'm going to ask the question, where did I miss that? Where could I have been better? Well, you could include me in the group text. Absolutely. I definitely could have. What are you doing this Saturday? Now I'm moving the conversation to let's heal. If you want to. If they're like, if I could tell that she was still frustrated and she wanted to stay in that zone, then I'd continue to match her emotion. I can see that this is really frustrating. And I can totally understand why. How did that experience feel for you? Now she can go, well, that experience felt like I was bump, 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 bump. And what was that like for you, Emily? Well, I just felt alone. Now I'm starting to get to the emotion. I can match that and work through it. Curiosity and connection. Connect with them. You can connect and share experiences as well by being able to say, man, I'm really sad my dad's dead. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry to hear about your father's passing. And I can go into a question, or I can go, my father died last year too. And it was a really challenging time for me. And I felt really, really alone. How would you like to be uh, guided through this grief? How would you like to um, move through this? What would be the best thing for you? I'm giving them the opportunity to say what they need, what they want, but I affirmed and I connected with them. And so, what's important, guys, is that when somebody comes to you, make sure to match where they're at, get connection with them by either being able to say, oh, I can resonate there. That you don't hijack the story there. You can just say, I connect with that and I had this experience, and then I'm immediately ask you a question again. This is where a lot of people will hijack the conversation. They'll
Mm-hmm.
share an experience and then keep talking about their experience. I'm sharing experience so you can create connection with me, and then I'm immediately come back to you and start asking questions again. And that's the big, big piece and component, guys, is to be able to stay curious and stay connected. Have you used this technique before, Emily?
Yes. Yeah. And it to be honest, it has, I've noticed myself hijack it or perhaps go too far. So yeah, you're spot on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a tough, tough thing, guys, to keep asking questions. Yet, if there was anything that you took out of this, it's to ask questions. Keep your
Mm-hmm.
mouth shut, ask more questions. And if you can get really good at asking questions, you will become a super communicator in your relationship. You will master your relationship by being able to stay curious. Even when your emotions get upregulated, you can stay downregulated by asking questions. This happened to me just the other day with my mom. She was poking some buttons with me about me and my diet and what I was doing and telling me it was stupid. And I felt myself wanting to stonewall and get out of there. And I just immediately said, Joel, ask questions. And I started asking my mom questions. Hey, mom, would you like to know more about this diet and why I'm on it? And she went, paused for a long time. She said, yeah. And we ended up talking for 45 minutes. So, if anything, you guys, when you feel yourself in an upregulated state, ask the question. As hard as it's going to be, ask the question. Anything else on that, Emily?
Nope, that is correct. I find that very helpful as well.
Okay. So let's put a bow on this. Today we talked about being able to understand what communication is, creating a shared meaning between a sender and a receiver. Being able to know that having these big emotions can affect us in our communications. And by using techniques such as, hey, what's the conversation? We're matching energies and being able to stay curious and connected through questions. This can help us start working through better communication. So if you want to learn more about communication, how to do it for yourself and for others, we have a great program called the Proclivity Method. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. The connection call is in this show notes. You can head down there, you can click on it, and you can move forward of working with coaches to work through it, where we'll take you through the feelings and get you to the point where you feel upregulated and then take you right on out of it. It's a beautiful thing. Emily, anything else?
No, we appreciate you guys listening. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend.
10-4. Okay, guys. Thank you for showing up. Episode 144. We'll see you at the next episode, 145. And until then,
best day ever.
Best day ever.
I almost just left. Dang it.
You absolutely can. We probably should. We already answered the one question of the day.
Okay,
if you could have any drug without the side effects, it's
alcohol. Oh, wait, what did I say?
Well, you said it, so.
Oh, coffee.
Okay.
Coffee.
All the high, none of the crushing effects of sleep, pressure on the chest, racing mind.
Correct.
There it is. And mine's being able to have a beer, with a little bit of buzz, no effects. There it is, guys. Let us know what you want or what you take. 3, 2, 1, go.